Hey, when you're trying to address 50,000 things going on at once, things happen. Let me apologize for yesterday, well, day before yesterday's Debbie Pearl book review. I had no idea until I went back and tried to listen to the actual file on my computer. Something's wrong with it. I think I'm having a software glitch. Now that I've tested it a couple times, it seems to be working fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-record it. I'm going to do it on a different computer, and I guess I got to test it before I upload. That'll take a little more time, a couple days probably. So there you go. That's what happened. If you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Tickemeyer. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering on Pathos. It was all about the quiverful evangelical movement, which just happens to be my jam. Non-denominational, high demand, religious organization, which is totalitarian, authoritative church organizations. That is what I worked in like 12, 13 years, writing and various things. So this stuff comes up all the time about how best to deal with this coming out. And I have a project that I'm working on that when I get it finalized and uploaded will be very helpful for those trying to come out of these things, trying to do what they need to do to heal. I'm hoping it gets the right help to the right people. Okay, today I need to talk about something that happens particularly in marriages in these types of churches. It's something evil and gross and just awful. Sometimes it's not so much evil as it is just crazy making for everybody in it. It was crazy making for my husband and I. We've dealt with this. We still deal with it. So I have a couple of different suggestions for dealing with it. I know how we're dealing with it. We're having conversations. So let me just say, if you're having any kind of issue related to your former church, between you and your spouse, the best thing you can do is just talk to them about it. Say, hey, honey, I've noticed X. It's making me feel Y. Can we talk about this? If your husband or wife is a decent person, they'll be open to having a conversation with you about what's going on. Okay. I think that's a good thing. Not everybody feels that way, but I think it's what healthy marriages are made of. So what is weaponized? What is a weaponized incompetence or learned helplessness? I had to laugh because the psychology manuals say that it is a state that occurs after a person has experienced a stressful situation repeatedly. They come to believe they are unable to control or change the situation, so they do not even try. Even when circumstances and opportunities change or become available. Well, yes and no. That's really, hey, Java man. We're we're at church on a volunteer basis. Exactly, on a volunteer basis. Always, always, always. So what it is in the quiverful world, the evangelical world, it is that theology that says women have to do everything, men do nothing. Why is this important? Because it means that men lose the ability to do certain things, or they forget how to do it, or maybe they never learned at all because they were raised in this kind of weaponized thing and they have the learned helplessness thing going on from day one. Okay, so when I married my husband, who was in his 30s, he lived at home with his mama. So some of this goes back to that. I was telling a girlfriend of mine 2 nights ago, I said, some of this that I gripe about occasionally came from that. But our years in the quiverful church did not help. Example, guys who say they can't do the laundry. Those of us that do laundry all the time know how incredibly easy it is to do laundry as long as you got laundry soap and a machine. If it's a machine and the laundromat, you throw the clothes in, you throw the laundry soap in, you hit start. It's not brain surgery. But in those type churches, men don't do that. Men never do the laundry. They use it off to the lady, which is okay if you have time for that. But here's the thing with this kind of learned helplessness, it doesn't do anybody any good. It overloads the ladies, the women in the equation. Then, and I'm making the assumption from a quiverful evangelical church where marriage is one man, one woman, and the woman is submitting all the time. That is where I'm coming from it. The cis straight common evangelical understanding of gender roles. Okay. Fortunately for us, we don't have to live in a world of those straight gender roles anymore. Remember, the machine is going most of the work. Imagine doing it manually, even hauling the water. Oh my gosh! I was just reading a book about a lady in Colorado that killed 2 or 3 of her husbands, and she was living in some $1 million mansion, and they didn't have running water, and she had to haul water. I was like, what does that even look like? Except that I do know what that looks like because our tenant is doing that right now. We have somebody we're helping out for 6 months or so who has a boat he's working on. He has a big, huge boat, and he hauls water for it. And that's 30 gallons 3 times a week. So we're having a conversation with him about how much water costs here. So long story short, he's not exercising that. They had an exhibit on it in the Museum of American History. I've seen a couple of exhibits about that, and I can't imagine, particularly when there's no laundry soap. And it's funny because here you can get those big model blue bars of laundry soap that everybody used to use. You can get them. I use them sometimes when it's a bad stain that I can't get out any other way. I will do the scrubbing with the brushes and the blue model soap and the whole 9 yards. But I'm not even talking about advanced laundry care. I'm talking about just the basics that most of us learn how to do. That was one thing I made sure my kids learn how to do before they left the house, was take care of themselves. Because in our old church, no man ever took care of himself. Women cooked, they cleaned, they did everything. They homeschooled the kids. They just did it all. The man did not do anything. Well, I didn't mind doing some of this when my husband was working in DC and I was working for fewer hours because, let's face it, that was a hell of a commute from where we lived. It was a long commute. He was exhausted all the time. So I didn't have a problem taking out the trash and mowing the lawn too on top of those things. But with retirement and illness, there are times I've required him to step up and do the things that I usually do. Yesterday morning, we had a conversation about learned helplessness and weaponized incompetence. Weaponized incompetence it's a little worse thing. It's not quite at all like learned helplessness. Let me see if I can find a good, oh, yeah. When you put weaponized in, it's the first search term. Weaponized competence is a form of passive-aggressive behavior where an individual deliberately performs tasks poorly or pretends to be incapable of completing certain tasks. This manipulation tactic is often used to avoid responsibility, forcing others to take over and perform the task instead. So this is something that has to happen. That happens sometimes. I've seen it happen among my old friends and their husbands, and I hear them all gripe about it. The ones that have left church, I've seen people break up their marriages over this. And guys pretending they don't know how to do anything when they can be talked through it. So I've really had to put my foot down myself here and say, like yesterday, we had to change out the ink on the printer, and he tried to pretend he didn't know what to do about it. And I was just saying that this is how you do it. And I didn't do it for him. I made him do it. That's a big change for me, because that's the other thing when you leave these religious organizations is not only do you have to change his mindset, you have to change your own. You have to not fall for those things. You have to say, okay, dude, you're going to do this yourself, and this is how you're going to do it. This is how it occurs, all of that. I think I read that there was a booklet in the 1950s that argued for weaponized incompetence for the wife. Helpful tips for newlyweds. Yeah, I want to say that it goes both ways. That cuts both ways. You're quite right about that. Example would be for her to deliberately hanging a cup holder upside down to show she couldn't do that. Jonathan, man, I have also seen descriptions of that where they tell you to do stuff like, oh, I'm a woman, I don't know how to change my own tire or change my own oil. Oh, I'm a woman, I don't know how to mow the grass. That's a bunch of baloney. That cuts both ways. You should be learning basic car care yourself if you're a woman, or at least have a plan for how you're going to deal with this more than manipulating your spouse into taking care of it for you, because it's very important. I know it sounds like it's beating up on the guys. Well, yeah, ladies have to do this too. And this requires the kind of mind shift that is really hard after you leave these places. It just is. It's just hard. But you have to recognize that it's there and you can't be manipulative. Manipulation will kill marriages quicker than just about anything I've seen, except for maybe infidelity. And even then, I've seen marriages that infidelity didn't do it. And I was like, where's your line? Most of us have lines in our marriages. We're like, this is going to happen here. It's not going to happen there. This is where the line is. Before I got married, I told my husband, XYZ cannot ever happen. If they do, guess what? What's a little bit different now that we've married 36 years. I had to think about that one for a minute. Actually, yeah, more than that, more like 37, 38. We're coming up on 38 here. And yeah, hanging that cup holder upside down would be weaponized incompetence. So how do you deal with a spouse either way that has weaponized incompetence, or just has this whole learned helplessness? There's actually a pretty easy way to deal with this. Talk them through it. Don't do it for them. Tell them you're too busy, or whatever reason you want to use is fine, including saying, hey, it does not benefit you to be this incredibly inept. We need to deal with this. The best way for us to deal with this is for me to walk you through it. And you also have to keep in mind that different people have different learning styles. Some people being talked to is enough. Some people need to write it down. Others need to have you actually help them with it. It depends. I found for us that me standing over and giving him directions is enough to embed it in here in his mind so that it's there. I worry about this. And the reason I was worried about it yesterday and other days is because my own health is so crazy with the mastocytosis that I don't always know if I'm going to be here or not. And there are times that even if I'm here, I'm not here, if you know what I mean. Example, when I was in the hospital last time for a bladder infection, with a bladder and kidney infection with 104 fever, I was kind of mental for a number of days afterwards. It was not good. It was not good. I couldn't tell him to do whatever at all. And it was a bad thing because he had stuff he needed to do that he didn't know how to do, that we had to go through that. So I've made sure now that what is going on? I feel like I'm having hot flashes again and again, and I know I'm past that. Ugh. So that is one of the things I think is the most marriage destroying in a lot of evangelical type churches, is that they teach us. They teach us weaponized incompetence to the men. They teach this learned helplessness to the ladies and the men. And the incompetence, weaponized incompetence to ladies. So everybody gets a dose of this. You look at guys like John Piper, who teaches strict gender roles. Well, I'm going to tell you something. adherence to strict gender roles can leave you stranded out on the highway with a broken down car or a flat tire if you're a woman and not what the first idea how to deal with it, how to do it. Look, I don't like changing tires either, but I can do it. I can do it. I have learned. I've learned through the years what I need to do to keep on keeping on. And if it involves having to change my tires, so be it. So many of these guys, and Doug Wilson, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at John Piper. I'm looking at John MacArthur. I'm looking at all the soft complementarians too. They all teach this. Women only doing these things, men only doing that thing. I think most people now call AAA. One problem is that cars are not coming with spare tires anymore. Yeah, that is a problem, Java Man. I had to go buy an actual spare tire for my new car because for me, that's a non-negotiable. I learned those donuts aren't worth a damn. And I've seen people run on those donuts for long periods of time, and they're just meant to get you from point A to point B to get the tire change. That's all. They're useless. And here it's even worse because of the way the roads are. If you get off the main highway, you're going to have some issues. Like I was saying last week, I had to drive my car through a river that was swollen with the rainwater. Fortunately, I knew my car pretty well. I knew where the high spot in the river was, where I could safely ford the river. And at one point, I had one set of wheels up on the gravel and the other in the water. The incredible shrinking spare. You know why? Because car manufacturers want to cut corners wherever they can. They want to make a profit. And I understand that, but I would pay extra for that. I would pay extra to have a real tire. It would be worth it for me. I don't know about anybody else, but it would definitely be worth it. And we get flat tires. It's just a reality. Even if we're in the States, we're going to get flat tires every now and then. Here, it's a little bit, I've popped tires sometimes on the potholes here. So you go through tires a lot quicker here because you will hit potholes and things that will just shred them. But if you have that little tiny donut in your car, you're not going to be able to get anywhere with it very far here. And it's not meant for far. It's meant for just getting to the next town over and getting it changed. So I can't entirely fault them. Hugo's spark tires under the hood with, oh my gosh. I did not know that. You know, my father was fascinated by the Hugos. He wanted one really badly, and we talked about it. I talked about buying one once upon a time because I was back in my starving student days, and I could actually afford a Hugo. I couldn't afford too much else, but I could afford a Hugo, and history has not been kind to them. They didn't hold up well at all. About the only other cars that I saw that were worse in my life were the Trabants, the ones that the East Germans made that weren't made out of metal. They were like pressed wood. Because I used to laugh and say, what happens when you have a wreck? Do you get you a can of wood filler and you just spill it in your car? What do you do? So some of the communist countries did not make the best cars in the world. And they made them out of weird stuff. And like you're saying, they put that tire over the engine. What happens when the engine heats up and the tire's over the engine and it stresses the rubber? That would be my first worry on that too. It's not like when I was driving an old Volkswagen Beetle and the tire was in the trunk in the front and the engine was in the back. Very different. So knowing these things and knowing how your car operates is beyond important. It keeps the tire warm. Jonathan, man, I remember as a child dating myself. My father loved to get those TV dinners, the tin foil trays with the tin over them. We'd be on road trips wherever he and my mother never came on these things. And he would stop and put them on the engine and then drive so many miles and say, dinner's ready. I got such a laugh thinking, now I look back and I'm like, what the hell? He cooked dinner on the engine. So my father was not a guy when I was incompetence or anything. He knew how to do it. I mean, if it was, he may have done it wrong, but he had his own peculiar, bizarre ways of doing everything. Some of which I've inherited. Tucker Carlson. I know he's heir to the Swanson TV dinner fortune. That makes me laugh so hard sometimes thinking about that. And I don't like Tucker. I gotta be honest with you, because when he had his show on Fox News, there were times when he out and out lied to people. Now he's trying to pretend he's some kind of high level journalist who always tells the truth. He reminds me in some ways of you know who I was originally going to talk about this morning, because she has completely misunderstood, and I may talk about that some anyway. She has completely misunderstood what happens when documentaries are filmed and reality TV. Completely misunderstood that. And Tucker Carlson, I have seen him give better interviews now that he's not with Fox News, so maybe he's not shackled by Fox anymore. But I've also seen him say and do some pretty crappy things. I think he probably hates women from a little I'm seeing him say about the ladies and his own mother. Look, Tucker, I get it. I had a crappy mom too. When has she correctly understood something? Chuck, I mean, I think that there's some kind of processing disorder going on in there, because she's misunderstood so many things, and the reasons behind them. Like, she has misunderstood a lot of stuff about why people join churches. It's not to try to game the system and get money. It's not it at all. That may have been her motivation, but I don't know anybody else who has that motivation for joining a non-denominational church. Maybe it was the alcohol and the Adderall. That could be. It could well be. But that is all allegedly. Let me say that. Allegedly, and don't bully her. Tucker, yeah, I'm very interested to see which way he's going to go. So I do watch him sometimes, and sometimes going, oh, geez, and other times going, yeah, you got a point. Here's the thing. She's making all these claims about documentaries. Let me just throw something out here. Documentaries are not Simon Pure, okay? Most of the time, a good documentarian starts from the assumption that there is a greater truth to learn from something. They don't come with a viewpoint on the table. That is what a good documentarian will do. Sometimes it makes for good. Sometimes that makes for good documentary. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, like, oh, there was one recent one that ended up on the shelf for years, and then it got connected to QAnon, and then it got released, and it has also got a lot of flaws to it. But unfortunately, the QAnon people think it's God's honest truth, and it's not. It's a very bad example of what a documentary should be. So that's a good documentary. A lot of documentaries, some of them do dramatizations in order to make the story interesting in the audience. Yes, they do, Java Man. And I don't have a problem with that. Sometimes they start from, okay, my assumption is B. And sometimes they look at it and say, yeah, I had to change my mind. Sometimes they just double down on the awful, and the only thing they will listen to is the awful. And that's where they're starting from. A couple documentaries I have been filmed for, I was pretty sure, and I was right, that they were going after Gwen Shamblin Lara. And there's a lot of awful there. I'm not saying she's not awful, because there's a lot of awful. That is where KJ starts from, in my humble opinion. Exactly, Java Man. So this is one of the things that I am very annoyed with in our as an old lady who's annoyed by almost every damn thing you can think of, is people that start with the assumption. Okay, I like to look at it. I mean, I was looking at this weaponized incompetence thing and saying, yeah, they kind of have missed the mark on their definitions. That happens. But when you start with this hard and fast anything without doing any research, you end up in some strange places. And I'm not real fond of documentaries that do that. I knew Shiny Happy People did that. There are a number of other ones that I've watched that are doing that. Hell, I'm watching Fox News doing it right now with their coverage of everything Israeli has Hamas related. At least CNN occasionally talks to somebody who's a Palestinian who's living in Gaza City. I mean, you got to talk to both sides. There's just no way that you can pull a full picture of a situation unless you talk to people on all sides of the thing. And that's what I have against journalism these days, against news stations who say that they're hard news, but they go to court and say, oh, we're just entertainment. We're mere entertainment. I have a problem with that. And I've been watching it just a little bit lately because I'm trying to avoid this whole conflict. It's bad. It's so bad on all levels. There are no winners, in my opinion, on any of this. Even if Israel wins, it's still not a win because innocent people are dying on both sides. That's never okay with me. It just never is. And some of the things, Java Man, I'm seeing that too. And that really just breaks my heart. I mean, I'm seeing also footage. Oh, God. YouTube, you do not have my permission to do that. I don't know why you're doing it. And yeah, I see those too, Java Man, and I don't like to see them. First of all, I want to look at something and make my own decision. There's a lot of pro-Israeli stuff out there that's not true. The thing I saw that was the most untrue so far is the Hamas came in and beheaded 40 babies. That's not true. Where there's not even photographic evidence of that. There is manipulated AI photographic evidence of that. Money, of course, absolutely. So I am all about the truth. I am not about these people that want to show this all is one side. War is tragic all the way around. Nobody wins. I mean, even if you quote win the war, you still spent billions of dollars and killed a ton of people, sometimes even your own citizens. There's no winners. Follow the money. You're exactly right. Follow the money every single time. And that's the thing with the documentaries too. And dishonest documentarian will follow the money. They will follow the money, the personal opinion, the opinions of the world. I see this so much in what I work in. People that set out to do documentaries that are completely one-sided without actually giving any kind of credit where due. In a perfect world, and I'm going to say this, in a perfect world, John Piper might be right. In a perfect world, it might be nice to not have to worry about changing the tire on your car, to not worry about, well, like right now, I'm getting ready to have to call the roofer, the mold remediation specialist, and painters because we have had a leak in our bedroom again. And our bedroom was added on. Our bedroom suite was added to the house at a later date. So where those roofs converge, every year or two it will leak, and I have to get somebody here to fix it, a pile of somebody's. My husband doesn't think that way, and he's like, oh, should we need to do something? Oh yeah, and I need to get an electrician because it leaked through one of the lights fixtures. Fun fact, All the President's Men was the first movie to use the F word that didn't receive a XXX rating. Java Man, that does not surprise me at all. And I got to tell you something about that too, even. our culture has become ruder and nastier and all that, and I understand it. All you have to do is look at Reddit for a day, and you'll come up with that. I don't have any problems with words. I have problems with what the words are conveying or the sentiment and the thought more than I have problems with the words. Words are words, and that's a very old Anglo-Saxon word that does not offend me because, yeah. And so many times reading Reddit makes you lose faith in humanity. Absolutely. But I got to say this. If you're like me and you have a chronic illness and you can't really be exposed to a ton of people with germs, and you can't do a lot of the standard things that other people do because you will have anaphylaxis, the Herman Cain Awards Reddit is like one of the most satisfying things on the planet. And I enjoy that. But other pieces of Reddit, example, somebody today was whining that they were told not to wear a cologne to work because there was a coworker who was allergic to those things. She's saying she's going to do it. And I was the only person going there and said, you would be the a-hole if you do that. And not only that, you might get fired, and HR is going to come on you like a ton of bricks. And your coworker could sue you and sue the company if you do that. Do you want that? I think the triple X-ray was replaced with NC-17. It did make it more palatable, but I got to tell you, in the early 90s, the rating system, have respect for your fellow citizens, your coworkers, everything else. Give everybody the benefit of the doubt. That's one of the things that I think is missing now. And even I gave somebody, of the benefit of the doubt for way too long. And I've had a couple other people that I gave the benefit of the doubt and I've had to back off. I've not gone full ham on them like I've gone on this without a box of Kleenex, but they're not stealing my content that I've written. So have some basic respect for people, please. But that NC-17 rating was a problematical thing in the early 90s. Do you remember? I think the first cut of the Doors was NC-17. And so was, the movie with Sharon Stone, the gal with the ice pick. And you spent the entire movie trying to figure out if she was an ice pick murderer or not. And it was a hot mess. And Fatal Attraction, I think at one point they talked about it. And a lot of times they would take these movies back and forth and they would recut them over and over again until they managed to pass the censors. Another one from that time frame was Showgirls. Now, Showgirls is one of my favorites because it is so bizarre in the fact that every single bad artistic decision was made. It's like, you remember those Goosebumps books where you could choose your adventure? You could say, for adventure A, turn to page 13. For adventure B, turn to page 21. It was like that, except that it was a bad decision with every turn. Hey, Moon Child Pink. I'm sorry, I am just stumbling today. So that was really funny. But back to the whole thing with the language you're talking about, it's become more prevalent, and I've heard it used around kids, and that's a problem. I don't think you really want your kids to be hearing that crap all the time either. I had a Christian the other day got on to me for saying the word crap, and I said, would you rather me say the word S word? So I had a little fun with that because we're both adults, and I was kind of surprised to hear him say that because I've heard him say that word many a time. But back with the language changes, and it just does. It's part of what happens. And to fight that, I don't know. As long as you manage to do it politely, there are polite ways and there are rude ways to do everything. And like you say, yeah, that's the way it is. And just go from there. But with the weaponized incompetence and Learned helplessness. It's a major thing. It can be such a major thing. And this is one of the things that many marriages stumble on getting out of the CULT. It's a major thing. It can be such a major thing. And this is one of the things that many marriages stumble on getting out of the CULT together. Too many times I know people who split up during the leaving of the CULT. Everybody does it. Well, not everybody does it, but the majority of people, I would say as much as 80%, don't get out together. Sometimes it's part one and part two getting out, and then eventually you are together. But the learned helplessness really drives it if you make it to the other side and you have all this going on and you're trying not to break up. And this goes back to the whole rudeness thing too. You really have to treat each other with kid gloves sometimes. And that's what I meant when I was talking about you got to figure out what the other person's learning style is and go for it to teach them how to deal with it. Curiously, Toad and KJ's marriage survived rock and roll church. Jonathan, man, I have never heard that term ever used in an evangelical church. Never, ever, ever. It's praise and worship. Praise and worship. And I don't even know where she got that term. And she said that he played on the praise and worship team. I couldn't get over that because most churches that I know, most evangelical churches I've been a member of or been affiliated with, even my Methodist church, you had to be a member in good standing for a minimum of 6 months before they let you anywhere near praise and worship team. Many places had strict auditions. The place I went to, we had a yearly audition process. Once on the team, not always on the team. And whether you stayed on the team depended upon how many clunkers you managed to croak out when you were playing or singing. But I've also been places where once on the team, always on the team. The place my husband goes to, they asked me to be on the team, and I was going to that is not what he told me over comments, but whatever. What did he say? Today you've piqued my curiosity. Yeah, my husband's church, they were like, once they found out I sang harmonies easily, they wanted me to come on, and I started to. And then the day that I was going to come on, they had painted around the stage, and I walked in there and I was wheezing and was like, nope. And my husband has since told me that he doesn't want me to be part of the praise and worship team. He said, 25 years plus is enough time to serve doing that crap. And he's right. He's right. And it's a commitment. So I can't see the person you're talking about making that kind of commitment. What do I mean by it's a commitment? He told me that he didn't play for them. It wasn't his style of music anyway. Well, there's that too. Each praise and worship team is going to have a completely different style. You're going to have some that do the rock and roll thing and do it hard. I was on one of those. You're going to have some that have more laid back. It just really depends. I think that he said he preferred Leonard Skinner. Well, I have seen some worship teams that play not too different than that. I've never been on one that played like Leonard Skinner. But I have played on ones been on one where we would throw in random pop songs every now and then if it could be related somehow to the sermon. Example, I stay out too late, Shake It Off. Taylor Swift, we did that. We did I'll Be There by the Jackson 5, which was really funny because the girl who was supposed to sing lead, and that was a Father's Day service. So it was a teenager. Her mother and father were in the middle of a nasty divorce. She took the platform, and before she started singing, holding the microphone, she started shaking and busted out crying and ran off the platform. Well, those of us who had been doing that for years and years and years wouldn't even miss a beat. I sang lead. I just stepped up and sang lead, and because it called for a woman's voice, and we just went on. And that's what I mean by it's a commitment. You commit to a rehearsal once a week. Usually the rehearsals are lengthy, 3 or 4 hours. An hour-long morning rehearsal before you perform. And that means if it's a conference and you're performing Friday evening, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Sunday morning, Sunday noon, Sunday night. If you're working that kind of schedule and you're doing rehearsals in the middle of that too, whoo, throw your voice out in a hurry. So we had a big worship team. We were able to rotate people in and out when we were doing conferences, but it's a commitment. It's a commitment to rehearsal by yourself when you're in your own home on your instruments or singing or both. You commit to attending church every time that damn door is open, unless you're in the bed sick. You commit to supporting the pastor. You sign a contract for that year. There's a long list of don'ts. You can't be seen drinking, smoking. You can't be caught having affairs. It's just a whole long list of crap. And I just can't see somebody with that kind of rebel edge you're talking about committing to something like that. I can't see it. If somebody committed to that, they have to be pretty serious. It can't just be, oh yeah, I'm trying to get money for my child through this religious organization. Somebody with that kind of mentality is not going to last any length of time at all. I miss it, and my voice has definitely gone to hell in a handbasket since I stopped. Of course, it was a year ago, I think, and I am just relying on memory. We all are. I know I make mistakes all the time with my memory. I was on a worship team for a while that he would have loved, because when we went out to do worship at other churches, the worship team leader would tune up in such a way and volume that there were times if I hadn't had an in-ear monitor, I wouldn't have known if I was off key or anything, because it was so loud. I could not even hear my voice in my head. And I'm one of these singers where I know before I open my mouth whether or not I'm going to be off key. I mean, and singing starts here before it hits here anyway. So you got my rant on that. So I don't see him ever being serious about it, just like she was not serious about it. And she's talked about teaching Sunday school. That's another thing that they should never go in the hands of somebody who's not a solid member. Because you could have somebody who's teaching any dumb thing and not even know about it, even if there was a planned curriculum. Even with a planned curriculum. So churches that are well organized and know what they're doing, regardless of whether they're a taco church or they're the Methodist church or the Presbyterian church down the road or the Catholic church, they actually have curriculum. They have ideas about how everything is done. You commit to so long and you teach from the curriculum. Unless, I'm not sure she gets the meaning of volunteering. I don't think she does. And I have a second story about her and volunteering. At Pathos, many of us there also performed voluntary roles. There were a ton of people that would be mentors to newer writers coming on. There were those of us that moderated Facebook groups or what are other things for Pathos, did behind the scenes work. Why? Because we understood that even though we were doing this stuff as an unpaid grunt, that it benefited the organizations that we worked for and got paid for if we had a safe space where people were respected and nobody was saying evil stuff. That's what made it really weird when, long after her and I had our falling out, when Toad came into one of the Facebook groups and went after me. In a group I was a moderator for. What did he expect me to do? But squash him like the little bug that he was. So there's that. That's my rant about that and her. She's talking about reality TV shows and how they happen and how they're scripted. Many of them are very heavily scripted. I'll agree with her on that. Very heavily scripted. But at the same time, not all of them are. Um, I saw one the other day that was not scripted, but I was talking about how things like news organizations, documentaries have a certain slant they want to put on everything. This documentary had a certain slant they wanted to put on it. Squash him like a toad. No, I've been known to drop kick a few toads. We have these enormous toads here, and if I go out and it's next to the pool steps, I'm gonna nudge that thing away with my foot. Um, so I just nudged him away with my foot too. Oh, and the toads here are magnificent. You should hear them at night. The chorus of weird sounds. It's like Space Invaders going over there. Over here, you have Star Wars happening. It's just strange. I've got to record it somehow and play it back for you guys because it does make me laugh, even though right now all my cameras are dead. So I got to take care of them. So I know I'm rambling today. I can't help it. Too ADD to do anything else but ramble. Back to reality TV. They may not be, some of them may not be scripted, but they may be going at it for a point of view. I saw one, the world's most dangerous prisons recently. I looked at the Costa Rica episode. La Reforma, I think, was the prison they visited near San Jose, which sure enough, it's a bad place, but they put the worst of the worst there, which they never said. They never said that it's murderers and cartel members and that sort going in there. They just said it's the worst prison in Costa Rica. Well, budding, this is a poorer country. I always say all the time, this is a second world country trying to be a first world country with some third world things. And that prison is one of those third world things. And prisons in general here are third world. You got to provide your own food, your own clothing. They bring you beans and rice, and that's it. And it's not very safe. There are no amenities whatsoever. And it's hotter than hell. So they filmed there, and this host was just yakking up a storm and running his mouth without giving the reality, without talking about how this is common in Costa Rica. This is how prisons work. This is why you never want to go to a prison here if you could avoid it in any way, shape, or form. It's not a good place to do time. And there are other places in Central America you would not want to be in prison either. Central America is not a wealthy part of the world. They're trying their damnedest to become modern. Even places like El Salvador are. They're trying to put in digital nomad zones. They're trying to put in zones for things like what I'm always grumpy about here with my husband. For Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners, they're working. They're all trying to grab this gold and tourist gold. And it's unfortunate because sometimes bad things happen and tourists don't ever really take a look at what they're doing. Here in one of the biggest tourist areas in the entire country, we've had 3 cartel killings in 6 months, and it's never made the news. It's definitely never made the U.S. news. Last week, when I thought there was a car accident that had shut off the intersection, I found out later it was a cartel killing. They had the entire area blocked off because they were looking for the killers. And of course, they didn't find them. This old lady, my youngest child's husband, wrote for Cointelegraph for years. He now writes for Sputnik News. And I used to keep up with Bitcoin because of him and FTX and all these other things because of him. And I got to tell you guys, the little images they were selling as investments, what were they calling those? Like NFTs? I never got the point of that. People would try to explain to me. I'm like, well, you're really not buying anything. No, you're buying so many pixels. So many pixels. of an image you can see online for free, I would just be flabbergasted. People would try to explain that to me, and I just said, I guess I am just too much of the grumpy ass old lady to understand any of this crap any longer. I don't know. I don't know. I'm beginning to think that I would be better off just ignoring everything and going on my own way. And that's why I tried just to rant about this crap, because this crap I know this about these types of churches. I don't know about so many other things that I'm fine saying I don't know about those things. You're not buying pixels, you're buying access to a URL that may or may not have a picture. Okay, that's a little bit different than the way it was explained to me, but that's interesting. Here's the question. How many of those things are they doing out there? Is this any different than when Trump had Trump trading cards, the internet trading cards where you were allowed to buy all these heavily doctored images of him? Is that any different? Because I laughed at that too. I like the stock market. At least I understand the profit and loss statement. I understand why certain industries will go up and down. And right now, with the war in Israel, either it's going to tank the stock market or it's going to make it go for broke. Basically, no difference. Okay, that explains for me what's going on there. I understand. And I still would not put my money into it. Now, Bitcoin, I'm still kicking myself in the butt for this. I bought Bitcoin when it was $200 a coin. I bought 3 coins. 3! I held them until they were worth about $1,000 a coin and sold them. So I made money. But when they went to $40,000 a coin, I was kicking myself that I'd sold them so low. Why didn't I hang on to them? But like the stock market, you don't always know what's coming down the road. You just don't. And you can read all the profit and loss statements in the world, but all it takes is one bad lawsuit to tank something. All it takes is a war to tank something, a depression, so many different things that can happen. I'm going to let you in on something that a friend of mine who is in the construction industry was telling me that might be a worthy investment, and you might get big bucks eventually. I swear I've been talking to my husband about it, going, we need to do this. Detroit. I know, Detroit, armpit of the nation. Everybody says that it's a war zone, a modern war zone. We've all seen the photographs of acre after acre after acre of what looks like bombed out buildings almost. Guess what? Detroit is offering some incentives, and they're selling some of those places for little to nothing. And there's some things going on with the Detroit government where it looks positive. It looks like, and I told my husband, I said, if we still lived in the States, I would buy a whole block of those Victorians and restore them. I love those things. And I would be betting on Detroit coming back, because there are some things that are happening that make me think it may come back. And if it doesn't come back, you divide them into apartments, cut your losses, and move on. But I think I would be betting on Detroit right now. I don't think that all of these cities that are having problems like right now, like Baltimore, like Philadelphia, Kensington and Philadelphia is pretty awful. I don't think they're entirely dead and out yet. I think that they could come around. Who knows what it will take to make that happen? But I would say don't count them out. And there are going to be some bargains there. Even if you just take it, slap gray paint on it. And the reason I say gray is because that's the one all the flippers are using. I don't use gray anymore. I used gray when I sold my house because it was the hot color of the season that year. As you noticed, my bedrooms, I painted them soft yellow because I was tired of looking at gray. So I've always wanted to have a Grand Victorian type home, but I don't want to deal with Detroit winters. I mean, that's the reality of it for me. And I don't need a place that's big. I just need some place that's tiny, not much bigger than this, actually, than my bedroom. But I'm going to be really interested to watch all of these things and see what happens. Oh, I know what I meant to mention too that I didn't even put on the description. Have you guys been watching the arguments going on in the pro and anti Steve McRae world? I'm kind of sitting back and watching and kind of laughing. I'm not going to get in the middle of this one. This is not my fight to be had. I have my own thoughts on Steve, both good and bad, just like I have my own thoughts on a lot of people, good and bad. I just don't shout them from the rooftops because I think it's kind of rude to go after people that way, even though I do it sometimes. I'm trying not to do it. You know, like notice I haven't spoke about Backwoods Barbie in a long time. And there are other ones. I laughed this morning when I saw Southern Mutton's video about Ski Mask Andy and Michelle. That's another set. And I have to laugh because every time Michelle makes a new YouTube channel and I follow it, she immediately squashes me like a bug before I even have a chance to watch her channel once, and just makes me laugh. But so many people, I think, are better served by us not shouting out our opinion 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because it's just rude. And sometimes I go there with that rudeness. And I'm trying not to, because it's just, I think it's part of what's going wrong with our world right now. I really don't want to be a part of that. I say that every time. There are creators I just positively cannot stand. I just don't shout it out from the rooftops. I just say, look at the fact I've never been on their channel. I've never said anything about them. That'll tell you a lot about people. And a lot. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go because I have got a Righteous Gemstones review to record. And I have to re-record my freaking Debbie Pearl BS because the software on my computer malfunctioned and it cut the sound so low on my video. I cannot believe it. And I know it has to do with that. You know, I usually check, but I was in a hurry on Friday. I didn't check. I just uploaded. I should have checked. I've learned my lesson. I will check the levels before I do that ever again. So yeah, try to work your way through this whole weaponized incompetence and this learned helplessness, yourself and your spouse, because it doesn't benefit anybody. And know that reality TV is sometimes scripted, sometimes not scripted. Sometimes they're trying to make a point. Sometimes they're actually just letting what you would see go through in reality. And I find that we watch a lot of History Channel and what's the other one? Curiosity Stream here. And I think fewer of those shows are scripted, but some of those Alaska ones are very scripted, and you would not know it unless you did a little digging, how scripted some of them are. Documentaries, same deal. Some of them want to prove a point. Some of them want to look at what the truth is. So you really have to use discernment when you're watching anything in this world, be it reality TV, documentaries, films, whatever. News channels, because we're seeing that anew again, and because of the war and other things. So just use some discretion with all of that. Use some discretion with your significant other if you're trying to train them to do different stuff and they're somewhat reluctant, or you yourself are trying to learn different things. I am blessed by the fact that my husband has had to step up and do some things that I used to always do in the past. What do I mean? Stuff like cutting down trees when they're rotten, things like that. Just the manly man kind of crapola I used to do outside. He's stepped up doing that and some of the stuff around the house. And even if it involves me telling him, hey, you need to do this and this is how you accomplish it, at least that's how it goes down. Okay, you guys, I love you. I'm going to re-record everything that I need to do to fix all of this I was having problems with the volume. My computer, you guys would laugh if you see my computer. It's cracked to hell and back. And I think when I go to the States in December, I'm getting the newer, better iPad and a keyboard for it. And I'm going with that. I am done with laptops, desktops, the whole 9 yards. Love you guys.